So I'm curious, how many of you come the first of the year, the end of January, get your W-2, are excited because you get to sit down and pay your taxes, fill out those forms, maybe do it on the computer, maybe do it by hand, but you're like, hey, and then you got to pull out that checkbook and make sure you got enough money in that checking account and then write out that check and send it. How many get excited about that? I've never met a person that gets excited about filing their taxes. Well, unless they're getting a really hefty refund. Nobody gets excited about paying their taxes. I'm Pastor Tim Holscher, and thank you for joining me today. I'm looking through Romans at how God stabilizes us as believers, and we're in a section that began in chapter 12, where Paul's talking to us who I believe are mature and stable, trying to help us think about how to help others become stable, how to contribute, how to not be a hindrance to them as God stabilizes them. And yesterday we looked at the role of submitting to and obeying government. Yeah, that's conservative Christians and obeying government. The two of them, under some present circumstances, seem to be at opposite ends of the spectrum. It was that way in the first century, but it's still possible. And that brings us to the next part of it, and that is paying taxes. Because governments exist because they have a tax base that they can use to operate. If they couldn't tax, if they couldn't get money, governments wouldn't operate very well. They'd have very, very limited power. But they have authority, they can exercise authority because they have a tax base in some form or another. So they tax citizens, and this is and Paul is writing to Romans. They're citizens of the Roman Empire, just like the Jews were over in Judea, or Christians over there, Christians throughout Asia Minor, which we would know as modern-day Turkey, and throughout Greece. All these places where Paul wrote, these people were people under the rule of Roman government, which was not a government friendly to Christians. And yet Paul, despite that, and despite the things that Roman government did, Paul says, because of this, pay taxes. Paul doesn't say, go through and figure out what part of those taxes pay for the services you think are appropriate and withhold those taxes from those parts that you think are illegitimate. Doesn't say, just pay your taxes. It's not for you to decide what they do with it. It's for you to submit to them and pay those taxes. In fact, even Jesus was confronted with this when some of the religious leaders of Judea, that probably paying their taxes to Rome was as disgusting and frustrating to them as it is to modern day people, not just Christians. And they asked Jesus, is it appropriate to pay taxes to Caesar? And Jesus says, well, show me a coin. And they hand him a coin, and he looks at it, and he says, whose picture's on there? And Caesar's. And he says, well, then give to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's. I had a friend say that many years ago, sitting at the end of a Bible study. He says, pull out a dollar bill. It says property, or it's from the United States Treasury. And that's part of the United States. And he says, just always put it in perspective, what belongs to them and what they do with those things. Appreciated that comment. So Paul says, because of this, you are to pay taxes. For rulers are servants of God. We were looking at this yesterday. And they are there. And he uses actually a word that's used for priestly work, servants of God. It's the priestly work, but it's a priestly work done towards people. So there is an aspect of government that is designed to serve people. You know what? I can go visit my daughters in different places, and that trip is very fast. Not just because I have an automobile, but because I have roads that are paved and maintained by the state. It makes that trip very smooth. And they have patrolmen that patrol those. Those patrolmen have to get paid. And those patrolmen patrolling the roads, they keep some of the, as my dad used to call them, yahoos in line that could make trip on the road sometimes hazardous. And you probably have met those people, know what I'm talking about. And but they pay those patrolmen to do that, and they pay for the repairs on the roads. So there's things that we benefit from. We benefit from it. Do you want to give up having good roads? Do we want to go back to having to get around on old dirt paths that are very poorly maintained? No. So they are those that are doing a work on behalf of the people, and they have devoted themselves to this. It's what they give their attention to. We may not always believe that, and I'm sure modern day Christians didn't believe that, but Paul says that's why God put them there, and that is, believe it or not, to some degree, what they are doing. And so then he says, verse 7, so pay to them what is due. And so he says, tax, to whom tax, custom, to whom custom. Now there were nations that had a custom that they paid. A joint thing that as a nation, they paid to a nation that governed them. And there were customs that were paid when people transported goods between different locations. So we know what their taxes are. There's customs, and we know what that's like. Even in our nation, we've got all kinds of varieties of ways that we pay taxes. And sometimes we never see the amount of tax that is actually paid on an item that we buy because there's so many taxes that have been paid for it before it ever shows up on the store shelf. Yeah, but he says pay those. But then he adds to that, and fear, to whom fear. The New American Standard says respect, to whom respect. And honor, to whom honor. I remember many years ago, my grandfather took a Sunday paper, and it was hard, but he quit taking that Sunday paper because the columnists of that paper had reached a point where they really disliked a sitting president at that time and just would rake him over the coals. And he, after a while, thought, they're not honoring their president. Now, you know what happened? When that president was no longer there, and eventually there was another president that my grandfather didn't like, I still remember my grandfather saying, I don't like him, but he is the president and I'm still going to honor him. I appreciated that. I appreciate what he said. He took seriously what God was saying here, what Paul is saying to us. You show them honor. You pay the taxes and you honor them. Furthermore, he says, owe nothing to anyone except to love one another. Now, we're going to come back and look at this in more detail tomorrow. But how does paying your taxes, how does that act to help stabilize other believers? And how is that an act of love? I've put it this way in my church. If I, as a pastor, became a person that rebelled against the government all the time and refused to pay taxes, and then eventually I'm audited, I might not be the only one that has problems with that. What if the person that's auditing it goes, oh, that guy pastors a whole church. I wonder how many other people in that church are doing the same thing because I'm a pastor. And so they might then start checking into all these other people in the church. And those people they might be honest, they might pay their taxes, but they've got to deal with an audit, which to my understanding, that's no fun for anyone. So I can love other believers by paying my taxes and keeping my nose clean for their sake. But I'm also demonstrating this to help them become stable, because stability does not come by being a person that rages and fights against the system. That's not stability. That's up and down. When things are going well, then I'm up here. When things go down, maybe an official is elected that I don't like, or my taxes go up, then I go down. And God does not want us to be these up and down people. He wants us to be these people that are stable, because this kind of a stability really does impact the way we relate to God. And it affects that level of stability. It affects the way we think about our relationship with God. So think about that. You can encourage other believers by being a person that is submitting to your government and pay your taxes and demonstrating an honor and a fear for those people that are over you. And as I've said before, several times over the last few days, the government to which Paul was telling them to submit and to fear and pay taxes was no friend to Christians. And yet they were to do it anyway. Because there's a bigger picture, a bigger game going on, a bigger purpose of God than just the things that are happening with human government. And by doing those kind of things, we can encourage ourselves as well as others to have a good day in the Lord. Thank you for joining me today.